Let me introduce my guest who is here with me this morning. Again, part of our monthly commitment to C.H.I.C, the Community Health Improvement Council. Brandi Brickey is here. She is with she's an investigative caseworker, I should say, with the state of New Mexico. And welcome to KSJE. It's nice to have you here.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
You bet. You work with Adult Protective Services.
Yes, that's correct.
That's the main part of your job,
Yes.
right? And so talk to me a little bit about the work that you and your staff does in San Juan County. You are working with folks in the criminal justice system.
For the most part, it depends on what's going on. So with Adult Protective Services, what we do is we investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable adults. So anybody 18 and over that has a vulnerability, a disability, something that they can't protect themselves. So we'll investigate and then we'll tap them into resources so they can stay in their home safely if that's what they choose to do.
Got you. And so different from CYFD that we hear a lot about because you're dealing with adults.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you're in a different department altogether at the state level.
Yes. Yeah, completely different. We're under Aging and Long-Term Services Department and then specifically Adult Protective Services. So one of the biggest differences between CYFD and Child Protective Services is we don't take custody of adults. And it has to be based on their consent. They have to give consent for us to even be there and to investigate. We don't see it that often that they tell us no, but most of the time what we do is we make referrals, tap them into community resources, and make sure that we have their consent to do that first.
Got you. That makes sense. It makes it a big change, big difference from the other departments, certainly.
It does.
And so, but are there some elderly adults that maybe are having dementia or some other issues that they maybe can't give consent? Would that make things a little bit different in your line of work?
It does. It makes things different. If they have dementia or they don't have what we call decisional capacity, then we look at who's the next of kin and who can make appropriate decisions for them. We look at, do they have a power of attorney, guardianship, what's going on so somebody can make those safe and appropriate decisions.
I see. But your job would still be the same, to investigate these allegations.
Yes.
And then whomever is in that decision-making capacity would then be tasked with that question, I guess.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's kind of how it would work. So.
Yeah.
And so, are you seeing more cases, less cases, about the same? Is it hard to say?
It's a little bit hard to say. I know that elder abuse is highly underreported. I believe it's only 1 in 24 cases actually gets reported. So it is pretty low, and it just depends on what's going on in the community as far as the referrals and the intakes that we get.
I see. So give us some examples, I guess, of maybe a situation that may be suspected of elder abuse.
So for elder abuse, what we might see is an individual that goes to their doctor and they have unexplained bruises or cuts, or maybe they even report to their doctor that somebody is verbally abusing them or intimidating them. So we'll get those reports and then we investigate and see what we can do to make sure they're safe.
I see. And it could be, I suppose, a family member or an acquaintance or a neighbor or anyone.
Absolutely.
Really, right?
Really, yes. A lot of the times what we see is those that are closest to them, family members, caregivers, neighbors. It just depends on what's going on, but we do see that, unfortunately.
Right. And these are signs of physical abuse. I guess, is there other types of maybe mental abuse or other things that maybe aren't so visible that could also be described as elder abuse?
Yes, absolutely. So intimidating somebody could be elder abuse. Also, confinement or lack of getting them the appropriate medical care or attention that they need, not providing appropriate food, shelter, those basic needs that they have.
Got you. And how about financial? Is that part of this as well, or is that maybe more of a different situation?
That falls under our exploitation, but we definitely get those reports as well, and it could be power of attorney misusing funds, it could be somebody stole their credit card information. Most of what we see under exploitation is the romance scams and the grandparent scams. Unfortunately, our elders are targeted for those.
Now, give me some more details about what those are for folks who maybe aren't familiar, although I can't imagine, unless you're living under a rock, you haven't been maybe contacted by that Nigerian prince. But what are we talking about
Exactly.
here?
No, that's exactly it. That Nigerian prince that calls and says you've won some money, or they maybe start chatting online and eventually get this person to fall in love with them in a sense and feel like they need to send money. And they start asking, hey, can you send me money for this? I want to come and visit you. Those are the romance scams. It's always chatting online, maybe a couple phone calls. There's no in-person visits. And then as far as those grandparent scams, unfortunately with the technology that we have today is they're manipulating the voice of relatives, somebody that's close to you. And they're calling with a panic, I need help, I need money. And our grandparents, having the biggest hearts for those grandbabies, are sending money.
And so I get the scammer makes it sound like they are their grandchildren?
Yes.
And that's what gets, and maybe the phone number has been spoofed to look like a local number or even their grandchild's
Yes,
number.
unfortunately, yes.
And that makes it pretty persuasive
It
if
does.
you're not careful.
Exactly, yes.
But these are the kinds of things that you work with and
Yes.
you investigate
Yep.
and things along that line. And we're talking a lot about maybe these elder folks who are living at home. Do you also investigate cases maybe at nursing homes or assisted living homes or things along that line as well, these suspected cases, or is that a different situation?
We'll investigate those as long as the alleged perpetrator is not a staff member of the licensed facility.
I see.
Those fall under Department of Health. But we do have those that live in a nursing home that are maybe being exploited. Again, power of attorney, grandchild scams, romance scams, things like that do happen.
Got you. So this population is growing, right? I mean, the baby boomers are not getting any younger, believe me.
Yes.
And so that, I guess, opens up the idea for more potential cases for you to investigate.
Absolutely, yes. We're predicting that we're going to see more cases coming through.
Got you. And how, I guess, I know each case is different, but on average, how long does an investigation take?
It could be anywhere between 14 to 45 days, sometimes longer. Typically within our office, once we establish that they're safe and then we make those referrals, we can close them out after about 14 days. The longer cases that we have, anything beyond 90 days, those are more serious, and we're looking at maybe long-term placement, helping them find a nursing home, and really tapping into some additional resources.
And then is there law enforcement additional investigations that go on? Do you refer these things to them depending on the outcome of your investigation? Take us through kind of the steps, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a statewide central intake, so just like CYFD. Once you call that intake line, if it is something that Adult Protective Services handles, what a supervisor does is they assign it to a worker. And then if it's something that Adult Protective Services cannot handle, we'll send it to that agency, be it Department of Health, law enforcement, depending on what's going on. We've also had those investigations of our own that we refer to law enforcement once we get in there and find out that there's more going on. So we've been trying to really build that working relationship with local PD, and they have been so gracious in working with us lately.
Great. And so I guess in some cases then criminal charges could come out of these investigations.
It's possible, yes. And we do work closely with the Attorney General's office as well.
I see. And so the penalties can be, I guess, again, depending on how serious the allegation is or the crime, if proven, it could be fines, could be jail time, could be lots of things.
Absolutely, yes. Depends on what the allegations are, what the charges would be.
Right. And so for folks who are listening to us and watching us this morning talking about this, if they suspect that maybe one of their relatives is dealing with elder abuse, what should they do? Is there a place where they can report this, either anonymously or make a report, or what's the first step, I guess, to either get more information or make a report?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our intake number. I don't have it memorized, but I did bring it.
Okay.
It's 1-800-432-2080. That's Aging and Disability Resource Center. That's any questions that they might have. And then it just, as far as the allegations go, it's 1-866-654-3219. And then nmaging.state is our website, and they can do a web intake as well. The phone is manned 24/7, so it doesn't
Okay.
matter when you call, you're going to get somebody.
Good.
The web intakes are a little bit shorter, but I know they're more convenient. But talking to a live person, they may ask you additional questions. They may send law enforcement for a welfare check, just depending on what information they have.
How immediate maybe the need is, I suppose,
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And again, some of the most obvious signs of potential elder abuse would be those bruises that are like unexplained or things that just kind of show up and they can't really explain what happened.
Yes, absolutely.
Things like that would be a good sign to look for, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there are others too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's others. We get referrals for self-neglect as well. So that's an individual who can't take care of themselves. So we'll see some of those same signs as abuse or neglect. Their shelter is not safe. They don't have appropriate food, basic items within the home. Maybe it's utilities. They don't have food. We get those as well. And a lot of the times it's just people that need additional supports within the home, but self-neglect is a big referral that we get as well.
Got you. And the unsafe home, talk to me a little bit about that. I can understand, I think, the utilities, right? If you have maybe your power's been cut off or the water bill wasn't paid or what have you, but are there other things, even just from physical, maybe disrepair or things like that in the home that would cause action?
Yeah, absolutely. It's safety reasons. So if we have somebody who is a fall risk and there's no safety bars in the bathroom, they don't have a ramp to get down their stairs. We don't have the funding to pay for those directly, but we have the referral sources to help get those done. So it's making sure that they have those within the home, and sometimes it's caregiving services. So they have an additional support who can help them transfer from their bed to their wheelchair, or, even just getting down the stairs into the car to go grocery shopping.
Right. And with those resources, is that something that maybe some of their insurance might pay for or help to pay for, or just depending on the case, you can maybe find that for them because maybe they just felt they couldn't afford it and that's why they haven't done it, whereas there may be an answer.
Absolutely, yes. So we make a lot of referrals to San Juan Center for Independence, the Mental Wellness Resource Center, San Juan Partnership, and then we help people apply for Medicaid as well. If they qualify for Medicaid, sometimes they have additional funding that can help pay for some of those safety resources in the home. It's a case-by-case basis. Medicaid has to review all of that and go over it with them, but it's that extra step getting them closer to what they may need.
Right. And I know a lot of the elderly in the community really like to stay in their home, and families like to keep them in their homes as long as it is safe to do so. And so that's, I think, an important distinction maybe to say, even if you make a report, it may not mean that they have to leave their home, but we just need to modify the home to make it safer and more accessible for them to stay.
Absolutely, yes. One of the biggest things that we do at Adult Protective Services is we're going to respect and honor their wishes. So if they want to stay at home, they have capacity to do so, and we can make it safe, then absolutely we're going to support them in doing so.
Right. And you work here in
Yes.
San Juan County, and so you work with the elderly folks, adult folks throughout the county. Does the reservation have a similar program? I know it's probably different and not in your purview.
It is different. We only have jurisdiction over state lands. So we do, based off of our area, we do have a lot of cases that come in from the Navajo Nation. So we refer that out to Navajo Nation Social Services Department. So they have their own area of expertise that they would get out there and investigate.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yeah.
And so with this type of thing, again, you have about approximately how many cases are you working on at any given time and the folks in your office?
Any given time, it could be anywhere between 5 to maybe 12 or 15, depending on what's going on.
I see. Is there any time of year that's more active, I guess, for cases than another?
I haven't seen that. It kind of just depends on, I think Mondays are pretty busy. Everybody sees things over the weekend,
Perhaps.
but I wouldn't say there's a specific time of year that
It's
we
pretty
see
steady year round,
I
is
think
what it
so.
sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And what about the public? Any misconceptions that the public has about the work that you do or that you hear about?
We get a lot of referrals for mental health, and unfortunately, we just don't have the expertise and the qualifications to deal with that. Not that we don't want to provide supports, but mental health in and of itself is not necessarily making somebody a vulnerable adult. We're working on preventative programming that can help tap into resources before it even gets to an investigator. Part of that screening process that all the supervisors do is calling if we have extra questions, if it's appearing like it's more mental health. So it has to be a vulnerable adult. They have to be 18 and older, an incapacitation or disability. There has to be a location. We have to be able to find them, unfortunately. Right. If they're homeless and we can't find them, we can't help. And there has to be a specific allegation, something that is being observed as abuse, neglect, or exploitation, or even that self-neglect.
Okay. It can't be, or maybe it can, but I doubt that it can be, well, somebody said that they saw this happen to this other person, like a hearsay type of situation.
If there's information that helps support that, we'll look into it.
Okay.
We do get a lot of third-party reports, but what we look at is when is the last time you saw this person or had any contact with them.
Got it.
Yeah.
And all that goes into a report to determine if you will make an investigation or do an investigation,
Yes.
I suppose. And that's what gets the ball rolling or not.
Yes, absolutely. Once they call and they make that intake, our supervisors statewide, what we do is we grab them out of the queue, and I could be screening for down south. They could be screening for up here. It's whoever grabs it first. And we look at the information to see if it meets our criteria. And if it does, then we go off of how urgent is this? Do we need an investigator now? Do we need somebody by tomorrow, or can we give it a couple of days? So we look at all of those before we assign it.
I see. So it's kind of a ranking almost, a triage, if you will, of how when these things come in as to how immediate they need your attention.
Yes.
And that's important to know as well. So if someone is in crisis, I guess, they could get something started pretty quickly.
Yeah, we have an emergency basis where our investigators have to respond within 3 hours. So if there's something that's going on and there's that urgent need, then they'll be out there.
I see. And I've been mentioning elderly population, but you mentioned anyone 18 or over, and so this is really any adult that finds themselves in this type of situation. So whether they've become disabled, perhaps they weren't, and now they are, there could be now a problem or something else that comes up.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. That's 18 and over, and they have to have a disability, some kind of an incapacitation that they can't protect themselves. That's our criteria.
I see. Got it. And other information that we want to share with the public this morning, I'll ask you to repeat those phone numbers too in just a moment. But is there anything else that I'm not asking you about that I should be asking?
Oh, no. Well, June is actually Adult Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month.
Well, that's why we're talking.
Yes.
No wonder. Sure. Okay, good.
Yes. So Adult Protective Services statewide is hosting annual events to help spread awareness. San Juan County, we're hosting an event on June 15th. It's going to be 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Bonnie Dallas Senior Center. It's going to be different booths from community providers. They can come and grab some good information. We'll be there as well if they have concerns, questions, or even if they want help making a report, we'll be there as well.
Okay, good to know. And so again, those phone numbers one more time for folks who are watching or listening to us this morning.
Yeah, so to make a report for adult abuse, it's 1-866-654-3219. And then for the Aging and Disability Resource Center, it's 1-800-432-2080.
All right, very good. Brandi Brickey, thank you for being here with me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. My guest this morning here on KSJE.